Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crown Report. My name is Brittany. It is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. And obviously, there is so much royal news to go over. We obviously have the increasing pressure on the British royal family and why they need to start really seriously looking at and considering the European model when it comes to the royal family and how working royals operate. I think that is a huge, huge point of conversation because I think the Europeans have it pretty firmly figured out in some ways compared to the Brits. We also have increasing pressure on Andrew. We have the succession talks with both Australia and New Zealand being willing to take Andrew off the line of succession. And we also have files related to Andrew's time as a trade envoy going to be released, which is going to be a huge deal. This could be very, very revealing about Andrew and the royal family because let's be clear again, guys. I do think the British royals hold a fair amount of, I don't know if you want to call them the blame, but they definitely facilitated or were permissive in a system that allowed Andrew to get away with what he did for so long. So, and then we also have, of course, the continuation of the Marius Borg Høiby case. And some of the testimony from Nora, his girlfriend, is quite startling in his aggressiveness and violence and these sorts of things. And so we'll probably go over a little bit of that if we have time, as time permits. And then we also just have Queen Camilla meeting Giselle, the woman who had a big trial in France, if you are not aware, of being basically her husband allowed her to be sexually assaulted while she was unconscious. She was drugged. And so Queen Camilla met her, and Queen Camilla has obviously been very, very passionate about not promoting, sharing about women who have experienced sexual assault and protecting women from violence and these sorts of things. So I think that would be interesting to discuss as well, guys. So we are going to get into all of this, but I do have one little quick caveat here real quick, because I've seen this on X. I've seen this in the comments here a little bit as well, but I do just want to have just sort of a blanket statement to sort of get it all out in the open. I may have to put it somewhere else as well, but this is Royal News Network. It's not America's News Network. It's not Trump News Network, because I get a lot of people saying, well, why don't you talk about the Americans? Or what about Trump? And guys, that's not really the purview of this channel. And I know some people feel very passionate about things, but I just want to say, unless Trump is directly interacting with a royal, he is not going to be a topic of discussion. And so just wanting to make that clear, we want to speak about royals here, or if a world figure is directly interacting with somebody, that is one thing. But beyond that, I'm not going to get into the minutia of the Americans and the Epstein files and Donald Trump and everything, because I don't even have time to figure that all out. I'm still trying to kind of download everything regarding Crown Princess Meghan Markle. So I just did want to put that out there in case people had any questions, because that may come up as we go through this video. But first, let's talk about the European model. Yes, oh yes. This is one of the things where the British royal family, again, I feel like it's somewhat behind the time here. And I understand why. Obviously, Queen Elizabeth had an exceptionally long reign, and this did sort of put them on the back burner a little bit. But I think now that we're sort of looking at everything and really considering things and everything that's going on, I think it's become very, very clear. And was not even a big fan of this in the first place, but I think it's increasingly the only way to do it. And guys, that is basically adopting what I would call the European model, which is very, very small working royal folds, so not very many, and sticking with basically the main line of succession, and that is it. And I think that's the way things should go. I mean, again, I miss a full balcony. I do. I love seeing everybody. And sorry, guys, I was trying to look up this picture real quick because I'm sort of working on two different computers here today. So this is from King Carl Gustaf's 70th birthday. And we will probably see a big picture like this for his 80th birthday in April. But we have here royals from Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Liechtenstein, Japan. This is Danish, but also German. We have, obviously Swedish here, Romanian, Danish, and I'm not sure who that is and how close she is to the front, but that might be representatives from Iceland and Finland and these sorts of things. And so these royals are here in attendance commemorating King Carl Gustaf's 70th birthday. And looking at this, obviously, for most of these royals, they've even had some changes in their royal families since this portrait was taken. Since this has been taken, Queen Marguerite of Denmark, who is in the very front and center there in the blue, stripped her grandsons and granddaughter from her second son of their prince and princess titles and made them counts and a countess. And we also have King Carl Gustaf also making the decision that of his younger two children, so that would be Princess Madeline right here and Prince Carl Philip, right here, that their children would have prince and princess titles and they would still technically have their dukedoms, which is a lesser rank than their prince and princess titles, but they would not have a his or her royal highness. So they are part of the family, but it's very clear they are not part of the working royal fold. We obviously have in the Netherlands as well, only the king's children are a prince and princess, and the children from the monarch, so this would be Queen Beatrix. So her younger two sons, their children were counts and a countess, or countesses and a count. She only had one grandson. And so we have seen this switch over into the European model, which very much is slimmed down monarchies. And I was a bit hesitant for the Brits to adopt this because, number one, they have a greater population than the vast majority of these countries. Probably Spain is the closest in competition, and Spain actually is not even represented there. Spain would be the biggest. And they also have, let's say, a lot more ground to cover. Obviously, they have the Commonwealth as well, so that adds a different dimension too. But we don't need too many working royals anymore. We don't need that many. We need a handful here or there. And I think that's how the future should be. And it's something that they should really work on, I think, the British royals, and how to implement well. Because what we have here is sort of a tricky situation in that a lot of the members that are working are older. So we have the Gloucesters, we have the Duke of Kent, we have His Majesty Charles and Camilla. We also have, the Edinburghs are sort of getting up there, but they're in their 60s, I believe it is now, 50s, 60s. And so they're definitely getting older, or maybe 50s. I can't remember, 50s or 60s. I can't quite remember for Sophie. I think it's 50s, excuse me. So they have these members here who are getting older. So how does this look in the future? And this is something that, again, is going to be challenging, going to be difficult, and going to be something where they have to really think this through. Because I think the challenge right now is Catherine and William have a very different approach to most, let's say, of their contemporaries in some ways. Because Catherine and William want to have like big impact moments and these sorts of things. And they want every time they go in to have like it be sort of a big deal, you could say. But the problem is that you need people who are going out and doing the bread and butter things. You need a bread and butter royal. You need a bread and butter royal. Sorry, Sophie is in her 60s. I did not want to overestimate her age. So I was thinking to myself, okay, 60s, but what if she's 50? Then I feel bad for overestimating. So guys, thank you so much, Gretchen and Carol, for the clarification. So when it comes to Catherine and William's children, I think obviously George, Charlotte, and Louis will all be working royals. But I don't think when Charlotte and Louis, when they have children, I don't think any of their children will be a prince and princess. Now, in the previous letters patent, they were allowed to be. I think that's probably going to change. And they'll need one of those two to be the bread and butter royal engagement person, and that is Princess Anne. Because I do understand that being a higher profile member of the royal family, so either Charles and Camilla or Catherine or William, obviously more security, there's different things. And so it makes sense to me that, yes, they do have to be a little bit more careful and cautious and curated in where they go. But they do need somebody like Anne. You need Anne. So you can make these changes, but you have to have a designated Anne, a designated royal who just goes and does the bread and butter royal engagements, basically like it's a job. It's not super exciting, it's not super flashy, but they just go diligently every day, pretty much. Not every day, but I mean, Anne works, I would say, usually 2 to 3 days a week. I mean, she's out there quite a bit. And so I think we do need a royal who fits that Anne role. And I think Catherine and William, yes, we know Catherine's still recovering and these sorts of things. And we don't know what her abdominal surgery resulted in terms of her day to day management. So there could actually be something that she has to do, let's say, daily. I've been watching people, they come up on my Instagram, and there's just something so fascinating about it. Those with Crohn's disease, like very, very severe, and they have to do, let's say, IV, nutrition daily. They have like a port in their chest that they use every day. And obviously, we do know, or at least as far as we're aware, Catherine's port was removed. So I'm not saying that at all, but they have this very complicated system that they have to do every day to get the proper amount of nutrients because their body just kind of prevents them from doing that. And so I don't think Catherine is that severe, but she could have something that does require, because of her abdominal surgery, daily management of whatever condition it is. And that may result in her not being able to work quite as much. And so that's perfectly understandable. But we do need, I would say, William doing a bit more at some point. And obviously, again, still trying to figure that out post Catherine. And it could be as well that when it comes to Catherine, she just may never be able to be kind of making you working as much as she was because of whatever condition she had. Because obviously, again, not wanting to overly speculate here, but if you have abdominal surgery that requires 2 weeks being in a hospital, that means it's very severe. Whatever it is, I don't know what it is, it was severe and major. And then you have 6+ weeks of recovery, which I think is perfectly reasonable for a surgery like that. Having had surgery myself multiple times, mostly for bone breaks, I understand the long recovery period. It takes a while. So I totally understand that. And so because of that, and then you have the cancer treatment on top of it, whatever the condition was that caused that is probably still there. They just maybe figured out how to manage it better, took away maybe some of the something. I don't know. Again, just speculating here. But she may be unable to work as much as maybe she could have if she hadn't had that experience or hadn't had that underlying health condition. And so we really do need those 3 kids, George, Charlotte, and Louis. We need the 3 of them as working royals. And they won't have, I think, a long tenure to kind of get used to, let's say, royal life like William did. William really wasn't a full-time working royal, so until basically he was in his 30s. Whereas we have Catherine Amalia, we have Crown Prince Christian, a little bit Princess Elizabeth, but she is still in grad school. So we have 3 of the major heirs, obviously, as well, and Princess Leonora of Spain, of course. We have 4 major heirs. Ingrid Alexandra is in school, but she did military service. Sorry, I'm trying to go through and like, who are the heirs again? Princess Estelle is too young. She is 14. They are all already working pretty consistently, especially Amalia. She's working pretty consistently. Leonore is going through military school, but she has been doing several engagements. Infanta Sofia has done several engagements in Spain. So they are already getting the kids used to working quite early. And I think that's the route Catherine and William will go by. And it's more the European model. And I think it's one Catherine and William will probably have to implement. Yes, there's going to be so much more pressure on their kids, but they're going to desperately need somebody to work. They're really going to need working royals because once the Gloucesters retire, Duke of Kent probably passes away, and he's basically retired already. He doesn't do that much. We have basically Charles and Camilla and Sophie and Edward and Catherine and William. That's kind of going to be it. And so, of course, and Princess Anne. Princess Anne the goat. Cannot forget the goat, Princess Anne. And she fills that very important bread and butter role. Sophie and Edward do that a little bit as well. So they'll need, I think, with Catherine, William, and the kids, 5, they will be the full-time working royals. It'll be the 5 of them. Obviously, Harry and Meghan might have been if they hadn't left, but they've left. They're not going to elevate anyone. They're not going to elevate Zara or Mike, or obviously any of the York girls, or even Louise and James. They are going to stick with just their family. And this is pretty much what all the European royal families do. Because in Sweden, so again, going back to Sweden here, we do have this picture. Princess Madeline, who you can see right here. Let's pull it up. Although it's a little distorted. Quite lovely. Has her own business now. Doesn't really do any working royal engagements. She appears at state visits usually. She appears at the Nobels, and we're all grateful for that because I love seeing her and these sorts of things. But she has her own business now, and she's not a full-time working royal. She takes no money from the government, and so that's the role she plays. Carl Philip works a little bit more. There's been some criticism that he really doesn't have to because, of course, he is the second born son. They have Crown Princess Victoria, and she does quite a bit. But Carl Philip does a little bit, takes a little bit of money from the government, but not as much, obviously, as his older sister and his father and these sorts of things. And so Madeline's essentially just for funsies. She does things. And Carl Philip occasionally, but really it's Victoria and Daniel and Carl Gustaf and Sylvia. And that is the working royal fold at this point. And when it comes to Denmark, we've already been told that in the future, and this is a bit of a change because as far as I'm aware, Joachim and Marie get a stipend from the government, but that won't be the case. So Joachim is the second born son of the queen, former Queen Marguerite. She's still queen, but she did technically retire. You could say she abdicated. But for Frederick and Mary, they have 4 children. Only one of them, Crown Prince Christian, will get anything from the government. The rest of their kids are on their own. No, that doesn't mean mommy and daddy won't help them or that they won't get an inheritance from Queen Marguerite or anything like that. But there's no expectation in the slightest that they will be working royals. They've already been basically told, yeah, you have to get a real job. And I think that's going to be increasingly the case. Again, the Brits are a little bit different because they have a lot more territory to cover, a lot more population, Commonwealth, these sorts of things. So it makes sense for all the kids of whoever the king is to be working royals. But I mean, Harry's belief that his kids will be a working royal is insane. Like, that's not where anything is going. They will not be working royals. Again, by the time I think they're adults, they won't have titles and they'll basically have no connection to the British monarchy. So that'll take care of that. But this is how I think it has to go in the future. And I think part of this is because they had so many working royals, there wasn't enough, let's say, bandwidth on part of Queen Elizabeth, although I think a lot of this was just she loved her son so much that she didn't really want to criticize him or call him into account or make him face the music or anything like that. But when it comes to the monarchy, part of the reason I think Andrew was allowed to go as rogue as he was is because there just wasn't anybody watching him super closely. And there just wasn't strong management from the top. And that is a managerial problem. And that is a institutional problem that I believe they'll probably get fixed and figure out by the time William is king. But of course, you have to recognize a problem to find a solution. So anybody who's like, oh, you're anti-monarchy if you're pointing out these various problems, no, you're just being realistic. We have to be realistic. You have to understand the problem to know how to fix it and to say, hey, you need to fix this problem. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think it's actually smart and all these sorts of things. So they will be having a smaller working cadre of royals, and they will definitely be following the European model. So we know these for as well when it comes to King Felipe and Queen Matilda of the Belgians. Their oldest daughter, Elizabeth, I think will be the only working royal. And the rest of the kids, I think one or both of the boys have gone through military training of some sort. One of them, though, actually, he moonlights as a DJ. And I want to go, bravo, buddy. Moonlighting as a DJ, that is awesome. Great. That's great. And you have to raise some of the kids knowing that they have to go and find different jobs. And of course, in Belgium, it's a bit different because it's a much smaller country, much smaller territory. So you can get away with really only having 3 working royals. Because pretty much it's just the Queen and Felipe or Philip. It's so hard because I want to see Felipe for Spain, Philip for Belgium, just to kind of, and then we have Philip in the UK because they're technically all Philip. So how do you differentiate? That's okay. And so we do need to, so when it comes to the king's brothers, sister, and brother, they do occasional things from time to time, but they're not really full-time working royals. Prince Laurent, I think, has complained he doesn't get enough attention. And one of the daughters, Princess Astrid, she is married to a prince of the Habsburgs. So she married a prince of the Habsburg line. So yes, Call Me Cordelia says we should give them nicknames. They all have the same names. Yes, it is. Like I try to pronounce them differently, which I know some people hate, but it's like you have Philip, basically. Felipe is spelled with an F. In Spain, you have Felipe, which has 2 P's and an E, or 2 E's, and now I can't remember. And you have Philip in the UK, which is generally how we say Philip. So if I feel like if I have different pronunciations, maybe it's like Marguerite versus Margaret. Yes, they're both technically Margaret, but Princess Margaret versus Queen Marguerite, you can kind of differentiate the various royal people. And I did see Sadie in the house asked, okay, can we talk about the tiaras in this photo? So real quick, since I do think this is fun, always fun to look at tiaras. So this is the Connaught tiara that Queen Sylvia is wearing. So it's kind of a historic one within the family and kind of considered kind of a sweet one because it belonged to Margaret of Connaught, who was the mother of or grandmother to King Carl Philip and technically Queen Marguerite of Denmark. So they actually share, because Princess Ingrid came over, married, became Queen Ingrid. Probably not making a bunch of sense. I do apologize. So lots of names and like connections and the same names and these sorts of things. And then I did, yes. So, and then we have Queen Marguerite in the Baden-Palamet tiara here. We had the Württemberg tiara on Queen Beatrix, although she is Princess Beatrix now. We have the Woofers tiara there for Queen Matilda. We have the Liechtenstein fringe tiara, which I think is the only Liechtenstein tiara that she has because she always wears that one, which is though quite impressive and beautiful. We also have Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden. And it's taking me a Laurel Bushron wreath tiara, I believe that one is. I do apologize for not being able to name everything off the top of my head here. We have the modern fringe on Princess Madeline. And so that was one Carl Gustaf purchased for Queen Sylvia, which was given to Princess Madeline on the day of her wedding. So it's now her tiara. She's the only one who wears it. And she can also wear it as a necklace. This is sort of the Greek key Romanian tiara. I'm not sure of its exact name. This is the aquamarine Kokoshnik on one of King Carl Gustaf's sisters. This is the Baden fringe, which is a bit of a surprise because generally the bottom fringe is considered reserved for whoever the crown princess is. So the bottom fringe has never been worn by Madeline or Sophia, who's Carl Philip's wife. It's only been worn by Crown Princess Victoria, her mother, or her aunts. So I think there's something to the idea that only the crown princess gets to wear it. Not sure which one this one is. So this is actually Princess Desiree, who just passed away. They had her funeral last week. So I don't know actually which one she's wearing here. I'm not really familiar with that one. And we obviously have, she's from Japan. I'm not sure about her tiara. And this Danish tiara, I'm not quite sure about, but it looks like it's Queen Sophia's Star and Pearl tiara. And it was given to Princess Benedict by her mother. She inherited it. I hope it goes back to the main line of the Danish family. Queen Ingrid, I think, made a bit of a mistake by leaving the tiaras to individual members of the family rather than like to a, let's say, a foundation then everybody shared, because they have lost tiaras and the tiara collection in Denmark has been quite depleted because of these decisions. So I do criticize. So yeah. So it's very interesting. No, it's actually the woofers, I think, because that's what at least it looks like to me. I guess it could be the base of the 9 provinces. I would have to see. Because in that picture, it looks like, let's see if we can find a picture. So let's see if we have. It's. I'm not seeing it yet. So the woofers, it's diamonds and it has little things that stick up like that. I mean, I could see a little bit, but it doesn't look substantial enough to be the 9 provinces. Let's see. All right, so we do have an LME stock image. It is the woofers. So hold on just one second, guys, and we can see here real quick. So this is the woofers tiara right there. So it's not the 9 provinces. It's the biggest one in the family, so you can wear it with the bandeau. And there are arches that have big diamonds in it and these sorts of things. And so that is not there, but it is a woofers. So I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure though. You had me questioning because I was like, oh, you're right. It could be the 9 provinces, and I'm just not seeing it. But the little spikes reminded me of the woofers. And so that is sort of it for kind of the first section of this video. Just the British model doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. It is a holdover of basically the Edwardian era, and it needs to be adjusted. It needs to be adjusted. It needs to be adjusted for the modern era. I think changes would have happened earlier and better if Charles had been king earlier. But at the same time, we had all the chaos in the 90s, because that's what I would say is the time when the crown could have passed to Charles, but it really couldn't, because you have the divorce of Diana, the death of Diana, all happening in the 90s. Obviously, the affair with Camilla becoming public, all these sorts of things compounded to make Charles sort of impossible to give the throne to. Now, by the mid 2000s and then 2010s, things had sort of settled down. But the disadvantage of having such a long reign is that people become sort of beholden to honoring whoever the figurehead is almost a bit too much. Now comes from a lovely place of respect, of deference, of acknowledgement of their years of service. And I mean, this happens in companies too. Sometimes the tenure of a leader in the company goes too long and the change doesn't happen that needs to. I mean, you just have to look at Disney. Bob Iger, he's kind of run Disney into the ground. And he's been CEO for quite a long time. And you need sometimes change to happen, and change is a good thing. It needs to be done well, with caution, with understanding, with respect for history and traditions, and thinking of the future and these sorts of things. But in order, I think, for the British monarchy to continue and be successful, it has to change. The structure has to change. I don't know if Charles would have ever done it if not pushed, because I think, again, he's thought about his reign for, he's been the heir to the throne for 70 years before he became king, but he probably thought about it really hard for about, the last 50 plus years. And so I don't think this is what he envisioned, but you can't guarantee what, let's say, throne you're given, but how you manage that is going to be your legacy. How he manages this crisis is going to be his legacy. And I don't see it being great so far. I don't see it being so great so far. But things have got to adjust. That's just, I think, the only way forward. So we do have Carol here, who gifted 1 Royal News Network membership. Thank you so much, Carol. I do appreciate it. And then we also have Carol, and thank you so much for the super chat, saying, acknowledge the problem, then find the solution and realize what the implications are on the organization in the future. Yes, to change, and you have to acknowledge a problem in order to change it. there was a problem in the British monarchy. Andrew was allowed to go rogue for way, way, way too long. And they were at least somewhat aware. Or, more concerningly, I think in respect to Queen Elizabeth, all due respect to her, I don't think she wanted to hear the bad things. And not wanting to hear the bad things doesn't mean the bad things don't exist or that they will just go away. I think she made a critical error in deciding that, yeah, I know something's going bad here. And I know my son is not doing what he should be doing, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to learn about it. And that is poor leadership on her part, to be honest. To be a leader sometimes, and it's really, really hard. Or she should have let somebody else take control of Andrew. If she couldn't do it, and maybe even Philip couldn't do it, give it to somebody else who could. Because she spent 70 years defending this institution, leading it, guiding it, or whatever. And as it turns out, she ignored the biggest and most fatal flaw in the system, and it might bring down it all as a whole. So, and Carol said, are you going to read Russell Meyer's latest book on William and Catherine? Yes. And I would also like to interview him about it. So hopefully we'll be able to get there pretty soon. It's been sort of a crazy, busy couple of weeks. So yes, thank you so much, Carol. I was actually going to get to talk to Robert Jobson. I actually need to follow up with him, but so much has happened that it's like, oh, totally forgot about it. But I would like to read his book as well. But Russell Meyer's book, very interesting. I think some of it at least is what we've heard a lot of before, but it'll be interesting to see because I do think it reflects Catherine and William's perspective on a lot of matters in a way we haven't seen yet. So I am very fascinated to hear about that. But let's move over to, of course, the chaos with Andrew, because of course there's a lot going on here. But we do have some big movements in this area. And again, we're not talking about Trump. We're not talking about Americans. We're not talking about Mendelsohn. That's not the purview of this channel, but Andrew, maybe Mendelsohn if it's worthwhile. But so this is a pretty big thing for Andrew and something that's probably going to concern him quite a bit is his trade envoy files to be released as it happened. So Sir Chris Bryant, the trade minister, told the Commons debate that the king's brother was rude, entitled, and arrogant. And this, again, is honestly, I've said this before, but the sex trafficking charges, I think, are going to be very hard to prove and very hard to make stick. I think what is going to get him is abuse of power when he was a trade envoy. And now they're releasing these files. And these are actually files Andrew Lowney requested when he was researching his book, and he never got. So let's go ahead. So what do you need to know? Files relating to Andrew's time as a trade envoy will be released after the Commons passed a motion brought by Liberal Democrats. The king's brother was described as rude, entitled, and arrogant as MPs debated the issue. The government had said it was committed to releasing the files while warning that it did not want to jeopardize the police investigation. Sir Ed Davey said Andrew had shamed the country and the royal family. Andrew has denied wrongdoing. So this motion has passed. And the government was working at pace to also remove him from the line of succession, but we'll get to that there in a second. But the release of the envoy files will take time, and it will, because they have to make sure, again, if they have somebody researching, trying to make sure everything is done correctly and these sorts of things, that is going to take a bit to figure out. It's going to take a bit to make sure that everything is working well and in the way that it needs to. That's going to be just a huge, huge factor here. And they also had to make sure like names are redacted, trade secrets aren't revealed, these sorts of things. So, but it is an analysis here, says unprecedented date in Parliament. Andrew has been subjected to criticism, public scrutiny by MPs, unlike any family member of the monarch in recent British political history. It's been an unprecedented day in Parliament. It was not just opposition MPs queuing up to criticize Andrew, but Labour ones too. There was even pointed criticism from a government minister speaking from the same dispatch box. Today's debate was designed to reflect public anger at Andrew, who was previously shielded from discussion in Parliament because of conventions that discourage negative discussion of royals, but it sometimes strayed beyond the king's brother, including criticism of the monarchy as an institution and the protections afforded to it. It is also rare for a debate in the Commons to be allowed to speak about someone under a police investigation. If criminal charges are pressed, Andrew's legal team could seek to argue that it risks prejudicing a future trial, complicating matters further. So this again is a big deal. This is a very, very big deal. And this again is a result of years of indulgences. Andrew was endlessly indulged by his mother and by the institution she represented. And then we got here. So this is hugely problematic for the monarchy because the problem is once you let people in, once there's a scandal so big that the door is cracked open for investigations and these sorts of things, they're going to start fiddling around and they're going to find something that's, let's say, not really criminal, but not necessarily great. And they're going to blow it up into a huge controversy. And this is the challenge. This is a challenge of the monarchy here, is how to navigate this, because this crisis is not going to go away. This could drag on for years and years. And every day it drags on, the worse it gets. The more people question. And I don't blame them for questioning. The British royal family opened themselves up to questions. This again is why you nip this stuff in the bud. Because there are too many people. And let's be honest as well, there's been a lot of influx in immigration into the UK and a lot of people who do not have a deference or respect or the cultural connection to the monarchy and to the United Kingdom itself. So you have this very, I think, rabid side that really wants to break down the monarchy. And, you know, the Queen through Andrew, and Andrew just basically gave them a sledgehammer to do so. And so this is going to be a long-standing investigation. It's going to risk everybody. Even things, let's say, that are innocuous are going to be twisted into something negative. And there's too many people that are out there willing to obsess over this. I mean, I've even seen it, with the Sussex Squad and these sorts of people popping up and, getting so angry about all of this. And to be clear as well, Harry and Meghan might think they escaped this, but they're actually still completely and utterly enraptured into this because they still claim titles. They're still part of that same system, whether they want to be or not. If they didn't want to be a part of it, they should have dropped the titles, dropped everything, and then they could flee and do whatever the heck they wanted to do. But if you're still claiming titles, you're still tied to this system, whether you like it or not. And Charles better be quite worried here. Charles better be very worried here. And I'm worried he's not all that concerned, or he's just kind of like hoping all for the best. And I think the idea of never complain, never explain, it was an idea that worked quite well and works well a lot of the time. But this is not really one of those times. I do think Charles probably needs to sit down and do some sort of interview, sharing what he knows or what he knew about Epstein and Andrew, what problems perhaps, or how, he didn't address it with Andrew fast enough and regrets it, and how they've planned to fix it in the future. That is what Charles is going to have to do, I think. I think an interview is necessary. I don't think people want to shove this as just being Andrew problem. It's not an Andrew problem. But yeah, Lynn Gideon is right here. The bright side of all this stuff is that with Andrew is that the house cleaning can happen and can be done without any honest backlash from Montecito. Yes. I think we need to this is a chance to gut the institution down to the bare bones, get rid of all the fat, and show the British people that the monarchy is streamlining much, even to the greater extent it was before, and that has a renewed focus. It has a renewed focus. And this is definitely going to be the direction I think things go in the future. And this is going to be something where, Charles is going to have to be on his guard. He's going to have to be aware this is going to be a constant fight for, again, years and years at this point. The more that comes out and the more embarrassing things that come out, and there's more to come. There will be more to come. Charles has this chance to kind of clean house, clean slate, be honest with the people. And I know some don't really particularly like that perspective or something like that, but sort of the reality is that yes, if you love the monarchy and you love everything about it and they can do no wrong to you, well, I mean, even here it's like, well, this is just Andrew's problem. It'll go away. Or don't blame, the whole institution for what Andrew did, or what Andrew did doesn't reflect on the institution. The institution is fine. It's strong. It's whatever. But I feel like this is sort of a naive position, because the reality is this has tarnished the legacy of the monarchy. It has 100% stained the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. And the monarchy itself has been undermined completely. And it won't get, I don't think, the ship turned well until these big things happen. And of course, as well, the other big story that we have is, actually, it is in this article up here, is that there has been support from both Australia and New Zealand have already vowed their support to the removal of Andrew from the line of succession. And the children of someone removed from the line of succession will only be affected if the legislation states as such. So it remains to be seen whether or not Beatrice and Eugenie will stay in the line of succession or not. That is a question that Parliament is going to have to decide, or what have you. But this process has started. It's not going back. I think they will 100% remove Andrew from the line of succession. And this is going to be a warning shot. Now, it's sort of funny because I meant to do this video, but I had another idea in my head. So I have finished a video. I got a good portion of it edited. Still have to fix up a couple of things, so it'll be out later this evening. But I wanted to do a video basically how petrified Harry and Meghan are. And they should be petrified. And if they're not, they're fools. Because once you remove Andrew from the line of succession, once you do that to one person, and once you shatter that, so, you have a case in your house, or maybe an office building, let's say an office building, and there's a fire extinguisher there, and it only says break in case of emergencies. Well, we're going to break that in case of emergencies and drag it out. And you can't go back and re-put the glass in there. Now, of course, you can switch out the door, but you can't replace the glass. Once it's been broken in case of emergency, it's broken and it's open. It doesn't change. You pull the pin out of the fire extinguisher and it's ready to go. So when Andrew is stripped of this, I think he will be. I think this is coming. It's going to make it 10,000 times easier to do the exact same thing to Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan, if they're not petrified, they should be, because this is coming for them. If not Charles, William will do it. William will insist on it. I think he will. And I think he's smart to do so, saying, we've seen what happened with Andrew. And yes, Harry and Meghan aren't working members, but they still claim titles. Harry still claims very much obsesses about the fact that he is a prince. And that sets a really dangerous side for the British monarchy of Harry potentially being a huge liability in one way or another. He did that trip to Ukraine without really the support of Charles or anybody in the government. And so you have to nip this stuff in the bud. You cannot let this continue. The monarchy is changing. And this, again, is a good way for William to state that, because Harry and Meghan will claim it's about race. And Catherine and William can go, it's not about race. It's about cleaning up the messes. This is a mess. We're cleaning it up. And I think that is how things are going to be in the future. And I think that's perfectly, perfectly fine. But yeah, Cheryl Lynn says Queen did not appoint Andrew as a UK trade ambassador. Representative Tony Blair did, and the cabinet approved it by the Queen. So yes, she did not, let's say, fully pursue, but they wanted to give Andrew something to do to keep him occupied because they knew he was a problem. And even if the government gave him that role, that does not excuse the monarchy in the slightest for not managing him well. You cannot brush this off on the government. This is a monarchy problem. Andrew is a monarchy problem. He is a product of it. And he caused immense amount of damage, and it reflects on the monarchy. You can't just go, well, it was the government. It was Tony Blair. It wasn't anybody else. She was part of the one, I think, who figured out that he could do it or should do it. I don't think she was completely passive in this. That's her son. She wasn't passive at all. So you also have the fact that the Duke of Kent used to have that role, and they changed it. Obviously, once Andrew left the military, there's an actually interesting parallel between Andrew and Harry, because Andrew and Harry were both in the military to attempt to clean up their image, which largely succeeded. And then the Queen wanted to give them a role to keep them occupied. And for Andrew, wow, when you really think about it, it's crazy. For Andrew, it was the trade envoy role. For Harry, it was president of the Commonwealth. Yes. Yes. So I hate to say it, and it's not like I'm completely blaming her for his behavior at all, but there was a permissive structure that allowed abuse to flourish. And if you are CEO of the organization, that means you do take responsibility, whether or not or how much you knew. That is what it means to be a leader. It is. It is. You can't blame somebody else. The buck stops with the person at the top. That's what good managers do, unfortunately. And because somewhere along the line, the process broke down and we got here. There was a failing. There was 100% a failing. So I think it's important to recognize that, because again, you have to recognize a problem to find a solution. And I think for the monarchy, one of its big PR problems right now is that there is a problem and they haven't offered a solution. They're just going along laissez-faire as if nothing is wrong. And there is a part of me that understands that from a PR perspective, like, don't let something like this rattle you. But at the same time, it's like, how did this happen? How did you let this happen? You had to know at least some of it. The monarchy can't claim ignorance here. Andrew was under their roof. They had to know some of this, and they didn't do anything. Why didn't you do anything? That's a question that's there. Yeah. Lynn Gideon says, a mother knows her child strengths and weaknesses. Even Diana admitted Harry was sick. Yeah. And sometimes the love of a child can blind. I hate to say. All right. So we will move on here to a little bit about the Marius Borg Høiby case. There's a lot. We've had some more testimony from there today. And maybe we'll go to, hold on. Oh, goodness. We do have breaking news here. King Harald has been hospitalized, and Tenerife, the palace reports in a press release. So the king is being treated for an infection and dehydration. His condition is reportedly good. He was admitted to the Universitario Hospital in Sir Evening. Where is this place? Sorry, guys. Totally breaking news. I went to NRK for something else, and then I saw him. So this is an island in Spain. Okay. Norway. This is the second time in 2 years that King Harald has gone on vacation around this time of year, gotten sick, and couldn't go home. He needs to stop going on vacation. Last time he had to be medevaced home. That's like $500,000. $500,000 to $1 million taxpayers had to pay to get him home from Thailand. Stop going on vacation, buddy. You're 89. Just stop. Just stop. Sorry. I mean, because here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. When your family is already under immense pressure, the last thing you want to do is look like you're wasting more people's money. And if he has to be medevaced home again, so that means they have to fly a specialized medical airplane to fly him home again after going on vacation outside the country again within the span of 2 to 3 years. I think technically it was in 2024. And he stayed home in 2025 because he had heart issues. They had to fly him home. And then we're happening again, same time of year. You got to stop doing that. This is one of those things where it just looks bad. as Asma says, it looks bad. It does look bad. Not saying that he can't have a vacation. Obviously, he went a bit closer, but just vacation at home, just vacation up in the mountains. Yes, I know it's cold. It's Norway, but you're a king of Norway. Your family is under immense pressure and you're being hospitalized again. I understand if you have a health issue at home, but like dehydration and infection, so he was probably on the beach or something, wasn't keeping himself hydrated enough. Like this is not the time to have like this is not the time to have fun, I guess. I feel bad. So the king's personal physician will travel, so that's a government cost there, to Tenerife to assist local healthcare system. They further write the royal couple is currently on winter vacation in Tenerife. The palace writes that they will provide an update on the king's health during Wednesday after the physician has assessed the situation. In 2024, the king was implanted with a permanent pacemaker due to a low heart rate. So you can see, so also, you actually can't even see Norway. Norway's up here. And Tenerife is all the way down here. Yep. I can't believe that. Tenerife is how, I think is how it's pronounced. Tenerife. Okay, cool. Leo says, don't royals have insurance? They do. But like when you're a monarch and stuff, you know, you get your personal physician and they get to fly out there. But this was not the time. And if you're going to do something like that, make sure you had all your health ducks in a row. Because yeah. Asma says Queen Elizabeth stopped traveling when she was younger than 89. I think it's just smart. Yeah, I understand that. Obviously, Norway is a cold country. And probably during this time of year, it's probably pretty dark, like an overcast and stuff. I totally understand the desire to seek warm weather. And he does have the latitude to do so as he is king and does have money and these sorts of things. But it's all comes down to, and this is so important, all comes down to timing. His family is under enormous strain and pressure. And the last thing that you should do is remind people that you have a rich and lavish lifestyle and get to go to tropical vacations when you want to, but also that you're old, you need health, like, and that your health is bad and that you can't take care of yourself when you're on vacation. You don't do the things you need to do to avoid getting sick. It's just one of those things where he just needs to stay home. His health is not good enough. Bobby says it here. I understand King Harold wanting to go to a warmer climate for winter, but it's a health risk for him at this point. He needs to stay home. Yeah, he just doesn't have the health to travel. He just doesn't. This again, second time. And if he is medevaced home again, that's just going to play badly. It's just going to play badly. And we do, of course, have the case going on right now with Marius Borg Høiby, who is his step grandson. So, sorry, I was going to say grandson-in-law, but that's not right. Step grandson. Although kind of could technically be accurate because it was, but anyways. So, Marius is currently on trial, and we have one of his girlfriends testifying today. We actually saw her, and there's apparently a video with audio that says, "Took you damn hard." Nora wanted a confession from Marius. She says she was previously hit with a clenched fist so that she fell to the ground. So this is her leaving the trial. And so this is the 4th week. And so this is a part of the case about abuse in close relationships against Nora. If this weren't for this case, I would have been in a different place in my life. She broke down in tears when defense attorney asked her to explain how her case has affected her and her family. No one wants me to be here, she says. So this is the attorney assisting Nora. So one of the incidents of violence occurred in a bathroom in Alta in 2023. Huckland made an audio recording following the incident. He has heard this tape several times, according to... so this is Sally Cook, who was maybe one of the Attorneys are lawyers. So it says he heard this tape several times, but I think what he hears there is how he remembers it. He did not want to be with her there and made that clear. And he will probably comment on that too. So he is expected to testify, will involve an adjustment to the picture the Hochland paints of himself. So the defense attorney says. Does he think Hochland is lying about the relationship? Yes, they say. Then you might have to let go of the media attention before you wanted it anyways, says Diaz, who is his other defense attorney. I feel like it was natural with the industry I was in, and everyone told me you had to put some things out. So one of the incidents happened when she discovered Holmby had spent money on OnlyFans when they were in Alta. She says she told Holmby that she thought it was disgusting. Then he allegedly started screaming at her. Then she went into the bathroom. And then he comes in right behind me and grabs me by my neck. And then he stands and screams at me from his stomach, "I hate you." And she says he grabs her by the throat. And right after that, he takes a fist and punches me so I fall to the ground and continues to stand and scream and then kicked me. So she says he has clapped me on several occasions, but not with a clenched fist. So slapped her. I'm going to guess that this means. So this is obviously from Google Translate. So it translates the page immediately for me. No, he wouldn't admit to anything, she says. Hochland says she got a lump in her lip and pain in her jaw. So this is kind of the beginning of their relationship. So they were on a cabin trip when something occurred. They were at a party in Oslo where he screamed at her. So just lots and lots of violence and a lot of grabbing her by the neck. So this was when I read Aftenposten and her testimony from last week. What became apparent quite a lot is that he would frequently grab her by the neck and squeeze and try to, choke her and strangle her basically. And one time it sounded like she did actually pass out and black out and he kind of slapped her awake. I mean, this is a pattern. Asma says it right here, and I agree. It's a pattern of behavior. And what was interesting about the Aftenposten reporting as well is that it said that he would, or at least she testified that he would sometimes get really emotional and cry on the floor. And so then she would feel the need to comfort him. I mean, it's an obvious pattern of abuse here. Very much a huge pattern of abuse. And this is a situation where he's just incredibly out of control, incredibly violent. And, with his sister attempting to defend him and these sorts of things, I'm just sorry, but again, this goes back to the same thing with the Brits. You can't help Marius fix his issues without acknowledging he has issues. He is violent. Seems like he's a drug addict. He's unstable. He's violent towards women. Just acknowledge it and move on. Like, you have to acknowledge it to help him fix it. And saying basically that, the media is basically making this up. That was sort of Ingrid Alexandra's argument. It's no, it's just the media. They're just making it all up. No, they're not. No, they're not. He has a pattern of behavior. He is violent against women. And so the family has to acknowledge that. And unfortunately, this is a situation where it does reflect on the crown princely couple. So that's Hakan and Mette-Marit, because he was, again, largely raised in their home. So what happened? And here's the interesting thing too. And I saw this a bit in my comments on YouTube and maybe on X, but mostly YouTube. And I am interested. So if anybody who is here from Norway or who watches this later, and if you are from Norway, please let me know if you find an actual article or anything that states this, because I do want to include it in my research in between the relationship between Mette-Marit and Epstein. So it seems to be in 2013 is when the story initially circulated that Hakan and Mette-Marit had drawn up divorce papers. Now, why I find this really interesting is that I think that was around the time that one of Epstein's associates, who was very good friends with Mette-Marit, shared that she didn't want to be in Oslo. So if we have trouble in the marriage, yes, everybody has troubles in the marriage, but you know, how much did that influence and impact their parenting? And did that contribute to what we have now with Marius? That I don't know. And that is an interesting, I think, point of discussion to have for sure, because Marius is a huge problem. And he does reflect on the royal family. He reflects on them so incredibly much. It's kind of sort of insane. And so, and how much did he influence his siblings and these sorts of things, which I'm going to guess is quite a bit. So I think this is incredibly important to discuss and to figure out. But yes, if anybody has like an actual like article reporting, even if it's like from Swedish or Sweden, Denmark, Germany, something like that, that there was the potentiality of divorce or that was discussed at some point around 2013. If you send me that, that would be awesome. I mean, I'll look for it myself, but if there's anybody from Norway on here who knows what I'm talking about, or from Germany, Sweden, or Denmark and remembers that story, let me know, because I was seeing some people talk about it, and I guess it's sort of hard to find. It wasn't, let's say, hugely discussed out there. But let's move on to what I think is really cool that Queen Camilla has done, although obviously there's a lot of pressure on the Brits right now based on the whole Epstein situation, but she has met with Madame Giselle Percot at Clarence House. So Madame was awarded the Legion of Honor in 2025, following the incredible courage, grace, and dignity with which she waived her right to anonymity in France's largest rape trial. Madame Percot's courage to speak on behalf of all victims has won her global admiration, and earlier this month, she published a memoir. The Queen has worked to support survivors of sexual abuse and domestic abuse for many decades, and wrote to Giselle following the trial in 2024. So I did look up this case a little bit because I kind of had heard it, but not in much detail. And in this particular case, so she had medication that she was taking for a particular condition, Giselle, and her husband took advantage of that, also supplied her with sleeping pills, and then would actually not hire, but allow men to pay to come and assault her when she was unconscious and in a drug stupor. And it was quite sad when I was reading about it because she was having memory lapses, of course. She felt like she had amnesia. She didn't know why. She thought maybe she had Alzheimer's or something like that. And it wasn't until her husband was caught peeping under a woman's skirt. And the police went into the phone and found a whole bunch of videos that he had taken of the various assaults, that she was even informed that they had occurred. She had no idea until they walked over and told her. So that is astounding and obviously terribly, horribly tragic in so many ways. But she had decided that she wanted to waive anonymity. So she was, sorry, I know I can't say that. Anonymity. I know how to say it, but do you ever find it funny that your tongue just doesn't want to do what you know it should do? So she waived, her right to be, let's say, anonymous in the situation, because I can't say anonymity. And she's decided to waive that right. And even when I think they were showing videos of the alleged assaults, because they were able to charge 50 other men in this case, which is insane. That shows you how many men that her husband was able to get to do this. And so the videos were shown at some point, and she said, when like they said, well, we can, shield these and everything. And she's like, no, it's not my shame, it's theirs, talking about the men. So this is, just such an amazing case. So glad that Queen Camilla was able to support her, but it does kind of, I'm curious if we go through the comments here, because there is obviously as well another facet to this, which is the Epstein case. And did the royal family do enough to address the Epstein case and Andrew and potential abuse in that particular situation? somebody puts a post of Andrew here. So it's one of those things where it makes, even if she's doing a great job, even if, let's say, she probably had less knowledge of Andrew than anyone else, it's just sort of unfortunate that she gets somewhat, smeared a bit because of, again, the royal families, how they've dealt with Andrew. So I think, though, this is amazing. I just wanted to end on, let's say, a high note here. I think this is absolutely lovely of Queen Camilla to do and to highlight and to support this woman and her immense courage to go out and, this I'm sure I just can't imagine the violation that you would feel. But it's just also has some interesting correlations to Marius because he apparently allegedly, violated women when they were unconscious. And so there are terrible things out there, but it's nice to see people addressing them early. So guys, that is all I have for the Crown Report. We do have a hard cutoff here at 4:30. So we will go ahead and answer a couple of questions, but I did want to give you guys a preview to what I will have posting as my video later today, which I'm like bummed. Why didn't I think of the petrified? I was thinking about something else because I had this really interesting idea. So I'll preview it to you guys, and you guys will let me know if you think it's a great idea or if it really stinks. But one of the things I found really interesting was Alyssa. I want to say they pronounce her name Liu. And obviously, she's the figure skater who won the gold medal at the Olympics. And she's seen a huge rise in her number of Instagram followers. At least last time I looked. And she's already grown to 5.3. She started off my video at 5.2 or 5.1, and then it went 5.2, and now it's 5.3. And it's growing really quickly. And yes, she's a figure skater. I get that. But people aren't following her. This is her, in case you're unaware. She's the one with kind of the funky hair, you could say. So if you're familiar with her as a figure skater, she has sort of the funky hair. And so what I found really interesting here is that she has grown so quickly. She actually started off a couple weeks ago with only 211,000 followers, and now she has 5.3 million. So obviously, why is that? And why can Meghan only barely scrape over to 4.5 million? And I thought it was really interesting because to me, it's the authenticity. Lynn Gideon, you beat me to the punch. It's the authenticity. People like her. They're not following her because she's just a skater. They're following her because they genuinely like her and her personality. She comes across, I think, incredibly well. She seems joyful. That's what everybody describes her on the ice, is joyful. And I think that's awesome. She stood up for herself and did skating her way after her father pushed her for years. She took a step back, said, I'm going to do it my way or the highway, and that's it, daddy. And he's like, okay. And she won. And yeah, Azima says as well here, real attracts real. Yeah. She is genuinely, I think, growing just because people are like, oh, she's cool, she's unique, she's interesting, she has ideas, and she's authentic. And you can maybe not like everything she does, but there's a realness to her. And I think that's what Meghan Markle is so missing, is that authenticity. That's why her stuff is just not growing at all. It's very stagnant. It's not really developing well. And yeah, Rich says here she has a natural ability to bond with people. Good for her. That is awesome. Yeah. And so I just kind of compare that a little bit. And I also bring up something else, which I think is really interesting, which is that Meghan Markle has yet to exhibit real talent. I think sometimes too, because even if people don't like her, if she was interesting or intriguing or they liked her content or something like that, people would follow her. But it's just obviously the journalists, the Uber fans, which I would argue are a million of followers. There's some people who hate follow, these sorts of things. And so I think authenticity and honestly real talent. And I have another example from the Olympians who to discuss there as well, that real talent wins at the end of the day. Sometimes it's just about talent. And that's what attracts people too, is that oh, you're talented. You've achieved something. Name one thing Meghan Markle has achieved besides marrying a rich guy and getting a bit part on a TV show. She has not accomplished that much. Really not. So anyways, just wanting to throw that little tidbit out there. And we do have, I think, a couple of super chats here that I missed. So we have Christina who gifted one Royal News Network membership. Why, thank you so much, Christina. I do appreciate it. And we also have DSRB1KO. They're changing stuff up. And so I think that's coming across as weird, but I do apologize. And you ask here, how long do you think Queen Elizabeth knew about Andrew? Do you think she was just checked out? Why do you believe she didn't deal with him? She was Christian. Yes, she was, but like anyone, it's hard with your own children. And we do know that Andrew was her favorite. And we know he was born around the time of, like during a good, like a kind of after she inherited the throne. I think there were a couple of difficult years. And then her and Philip were in a great place. And Andrew was kind of a reflection of that. And so I think that was part of it. And sometimes I think there is a facet of, well, if I don't know, then I don't have to deal with X. I can kind of live in my shell of ignorance. And I think that's kind of where Elizabeth was, to be quite honest. I think she wanted to live in this shell of ignorance. She wanted to ignore it. And maybe she was just hoping it went away, just didn't take it that seriously in some ways, these sorts of things. And so, to err is human. Even the best Christians fail and have failings. And I think Andrew was her failing. She should have addressed him much earlier. Maybe if she had raised him differently, that would matter too. And yes, he's a grown man. He made his own decisions. But, the queen is in a weird spot. And I will say this, she was in a weird spot because she was both his mother and his boss. And she couldn't really do the boss part. She could do the mother part and she could share the love, but she couldn't really do the boss part. And unfortunately, at some points, he needed a boss and not a mom. And she couldn't switch in between. And some, I think, can do that better than others. And I think she probably didn't know everything. And to be fair as well, there are probably points where staff members were like, even if we told her, she probably wouldn't do anything. And so they just didn't tell her. And then again, we get here knowing that she didn't want to hear it. She might have been somebody too who's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear how my son is engaging with prostitutes. I don't want to hear it. And I think to the detriment of the monarchy in some ways, they went along with that. All right, Desert Mermaid, thank you so much for the super chat as well. Said, talk to us about a possible abdication. What do you think is going to happen? So I don't think Charles is going to abdicate unless things get really, really, unless he is directly tied to something with Epstein, something with the trade files and how much he knew. I don't think Charles will abdicate. I don't think that's within him to do so. But at the same time, I have always said, and I still anticipate this to be true, I think William will be the more likely option to not be head of the Church of England, to separate the crown from the church. And he's most likely, again, the other aspect of the European model, which I meant to mention, I forgot, is voluntary abdication has become quite common and I think rather popular. I think William will do a voluntary abdication, especially if Catherine, again, we don't know her exact health situation, but if her health isn't great, what I can imagine is that William will decide, hey, you know what? If I get to 70 or 80, Catherine and I get to 70 or 80, we're done. We're just going to retire. George can take the throne. I anticipate that could definitely be a possibility. He'd be around 50 if William abdicated when he's 80, or 40 if he abdicated when he was in his 70s. And I think that definitely is something that William will do. I just cannot anticipate, like Charles waited so long. I mean, this has got to be such the rough thing. Or unless Charles's cancer goes really, really south and he is quite ill and infirm, he would he would have to abdicate. But we shall see. I don't anticipate that. All right, call me Cordelia. Thank you so much for the super chat. Said the institution only indulged Andrew because of the Queen, and there was no mechanisms to discipline and outline an out of line principle, as Jason Knaft said. Yes, Jason Knaft, I think, was quite well in pointing out there's no ability to discipline a principal, and that reflected on the whole institution. And that was a problem with Meghan. That's again why they couldn't address her. They should have been able to address the bullying. They couldn't. They had no mechanism to discipline her. And in a company, even if you're CEO, you can be ousted by the board if they find out you're bullying staff members. There are mechanisms and ways in all companies to oust somebody. Yes, it's a process. Yes, it's difficult, but there are ways to do it. In the British monarchy, there is no way to do it. And that, again, allows a system of abuse. Meghan Markle might still be, I mean, I'm sure she is, again, in my opinion, probably abusing her staff members in California because she's been alleged to still bully people there again. But if she was still in the royal family, she'd still probably be doing those things because there was no way to make her stop. Like, how do you make her? There's no discipline mechanism. How do you make her stop? Like, I don't know. So that's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, you need a route to discipline. So guys, thank you so much. And then let's go ahead. Princess Goose says, I agree, Shaz. Camilla is doing such a great job in her passion project. She's doing what a woman in her position should be doing. She is. So retired in name only says, I recognize people are imperfect. I also recognize that imperfect people can do good. But unfortunately, doing good now doesn't eliminate the flaws in their character demonstrated earlier. Very true. And I've said too, there's a lot of nuance, and bad people can do good things. Good people can do bad things. And, leadership is complicated. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's flawless. But again, I go back to when it comes to the monarchy, the biggest flaw I see is there's no way to enact and say, hey, you are out of line. You are misrepresenting this institution and you will be punished accordingly. There's just no really mechanism to do that. They couldn't do that until Andrew did his disastrous, is it Nightline I keep saying Nightline. Night News something interview in the UK, which he never should have done, which should have never been allowed to happen. And this again goes back to slimming down the monarchy so that there is greater control over all the principles working, because you cannot have somebody going rogue like that. Harry and Meghan went rogue too. Those type of things, guys, should not be happening at all. That should never, ever be happening, is your employees going rogue like that. Bobby says, I think Queen Elizabeth knew everything from the moment Andrew started his disgusting behavior. She just simply didn't want to deal with it and catered to him from the time he was born. Probably. Clifford says, no one knows that Andrew was her favorite. She had 4 kids and they were all her favorites. There's always a bad apple in the family, and Andrew was that. I do have to disagree. Clifford has been well established for years that Andrew was her favorite. Like, that has been widely discussed forever, is that he was her favorite. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I do say that is a reality that, again, I've heard endlessly for years and years at this point. It's like you ask any royal reporter of the Royal Rota, they'll tell you Andrew was her favorite. They'll all tell you that. Langidian says, I'm telling you, the BRF needs a Chinese wall. Sorry, I was reading yours and that's why I laughed. Princess Goose said, but she saw that picture. How could she not know? She allowed this to go on. Very true. Very true. Once the picture came out, like all semblance of, but I mean, other people too were denying that picture was real for a long time. I don't know. I never saw, I don't know why people even thought it was fake. I just never even understood that because it looks so obvious to me. That was real. Heather said Charles won't abdicate. No, he will not. Sade in the house says, waive your right to privacy and you waive your right for confidentiality. Very true. I've got bird attitude says they're saying he's extremely ill. Oh, is that Harold? Let's see. They said he's okay, is reportedly good, but we won't really know until tomorrow. Gretchen says she also has an amazing backstory of why she skated for the US, not for China. Very true. That as well. She's gone through real adversity. Princess Goose says, once his grandchildren are 18, I think he might abdicate, but I don't think he'll choose before then by choice. Yeah, I think he would only abdicate if really, really forced to. Heather said, I can't imagine William abdicating unless George is willing and ready to take the throne. Yes, and that is what happens in the Netherlands. It's a voluntary abdication process, and King Wilhelm Alexander has already said, when I think Amalia is ready, And when I'm ready, we'll do this thing. But it won't be until then. And I think because of the long life that we live now, I think abdication, voluntary abdication should be the norm. I honestly think it's better for the system. It allows the refreshing, I think, in a faster and better way. Bobby says William would definitely separate the crown from the church, and I think it will be a good thing. Remember, the Church of England only started because Henry VIII wanted to divorce the Pope and refuse the crown. Yeah, there's not like, let's say, a great reason why the British royals are head of the Church of England. It was all about divorce. Clifford says a former private secretary to Queen Elizabeth has come out and said that Queen Elizabeth and her staff did not know anything that Andrew was doing at all. These stories coming out that she said not all, even the BBC Newsnight interview. So I just can't believe that's the case. I think she knew stuff, and not everything, but I think she knew and knew enough to bury her head. And that has been reported by members of the Royal Rota. And I know not everybody likes sometimes all the Royal Rota, but they are in the know. They do know. And this is not about Harry and Meghan and choosing sides. This is just about acknowledging reality. And yeah, Queen Elizabeth's legacy, no matter how little or how much she knew, will be smeared by this controversy. And that's just going to be the case. Koala said, good grief, Charles is still on the throne, and talking about William abdicating sounds weird. I mean, he is in his late 70s, though. He's in his late 70s. King Carl Gustaf has reigned for 50 plus years and is turning 80 this year. So he's only like 3 or 4 years older than Charles. It's just, I mean, but that's just the British system. Or not the British system, but that's just because of the long life that they were doing. Leo says, I wonder if Marius hates his mother because she left his dad for Hakan and her not being around a lot and is causing him to be aggressive and violent towards women. I wouldn't say it's because of the situation with his dad, because they were never close and he threatened her with a knife, I think, while she was pregnant. But more that, but I would imagine there were obviously some problems in the home. That's why I'm so curious about the divorce rumors, because I would imagine those were true. And my email, I think, is on the to know, but it's just editor@royalnewsnetwork.com. So Clifford said that job that Andrew was doing was appointed by the government and reported to Mandelson, Blair, and Brown. Yes, but Andrew was still under the banner of the monarchy too. You just can't separate it. You just can't say that the monarchy was ignorant, that Queen Elizabeth didn't know. She was his manager. Whether or not he reported to them or not, she was the manager, and the buck stops with her at the end of the day. That's how it works in any company. If you're the manager and your employee steps out of the line, yes, they did what they did, but it also reflects on you. It's just the situation. Asma says, hence why they still quitting. Yeah. Mahia Bell says, hi, y'all. Gideon says, you aren't good for my productivity, Brittany, but your videos are good for my soul. Thank you for all your efforts. Why, thank you. Why, thank you. I appreciate that. Seabass says, thank you, chat. Always kind and lots of fun for all opinions. I enjoy others' opinions. Give ya something to think about. It is always good to get something else to think about for sure. Riley's US said, Metamara had a shady past, but the Norwegian public graciously gave her a chance. She absolutely squandered that chance. She did. She really did. Heather said, I don't know. I've also heard Edward was her favorite and William, Peter, and Harry were her favorite grandsons and so on. Yes. So I don't think Edward was her. I don't think the Queen and Edward were super duper close. But for sure, it's been widely reported Andrew is her favorite. And actually, Peter is her favorite grandson. Like, we've heard that. Like, she was very, very fond of Peter. So I think... yeah, and it's unfortunate that people know that, but sometimes parents do have a favorite child. JB says, I have seen many, but rebut that. Koala says, I wonder how many people would deal with the situation that the Queen was in, being a monarch and a mother at the same time. Imagine, no way easy. Yeah, I don't think it was easy at all. Yeah, Riley's US says the royal family shouldn't be blamed for Andrew's actions, but they should have locked him in a room and told him to fess up and ask them what he did, what's in the files before it came out. Yes, I agree. I actually put that in a video. that what the royal family should have done just to prepare. And again, this is just about preparation, because sometimes it's about preparing for the disaster and being aware enough to respond. So this is why, well, I think sometimes defense attorneys say, never tell me whether or not you did it, doesn't matter. But I think they should have dragged Andrew to the Tower of London, put him in the most awful spot where people died torturously, and said, okay, you have immunity from me at this exact moment. Tell me everything you know. If you tell me everything you know, I will do my best to help you navigate the situation, but sacrifices will be made. But again, the arrogant, pompous attitude that Andrew has comes from years of self-indulgence and indulgence from his mother in a lot of ways, I'm sure. But yeah. Lynn Gideon says, what a nightmare for the Norwegians if he passes right now. God forbid. Yeah, that would be awful. That would be. Again, I don't know if they'll survive, honestly, if he dies. Because the popularity, the 60% support for the monarchy, which is a drop of 10 points. If you haven't seen my video, you should. Drop of 10 points from 70% reflects the popularity of Harald. With Harald gone, I can see it go down to 40%. And that's unsustainable. Clifford said, one of the Queen Elizabeth's secretaries has come out and said she did not know what Prince Andrew was doing. It's on record now. That may be what he knew, but somebody else, there were a lot of private secretaries. And so somebody else probably knew somebody different. And he might be just covering his own butt, to be honest. He may be just covering his own butt. They knew. There's no way they didn't have some inkling. And if they didn't, again, that's on them. That's a failure on their part to know what he was doing. Again, you cannot separate the monarchy from Andrew and his behavior. You just can't. The permissive system within the monarchy developed into Andrew. You cannot separate them to protect the institution. The institution, to survive, has to admit it failed and clean up and figure out how to fix things. If it doesn't do that, I've got the bird attitude says, no, Lady C is saying King Charles is extremely ill and taking a huge toll on him. It is also affecting Prince William and Princess Catherine. So, I mean, I do have to disagree, because we do know Charles's treatment regimen has been reduced. So if he is incredibly ill, so here's what happens in cancer treatments. So if a cancer treatment is not working, what they do is they try a different one. So if they're decreasing his cancer regimen and they're keeping him on the same regimen, that means he's stable. So I don't think he's seriously ill or getting worse. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that particular reporting. Jay Mansell says, hey, Brittany, would you ever do a video on getting to know you? I'd love to know how you got into the royals, your hobbies outside our Royal News Network. Yeah, I can definitely do something like that. I can definitely figure something out, although this is most of my hobby. But yeah, I can share with you guys the whole, I guess, interesting story and the interest. And I may have to find a book or two, although I don't know if one of, yeah, I don't see it. Because I feel like some of it's showing the books and the interest. And I mean, guys, I do have the Beanie Babies were a rage and remembered when Diana died and everything, but we can definitely do that. But I got a very last minute hair appointment because the hair is looking bad. So I got to rush over there. It's out for our new video coming up here very, very soon, because it takes me a little while to get there. My hair takes a while. Not sure. But I look forward to sharing it with you guys, because I think it's just a really interesting comparison between Meghan and Alyssa and Harrison. So guys, thank you again. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, or maybe morning, wherever you're at. And I shall speak to you again very, very soon.